Welcome, Vikings, Normans, and temporal interlopers, to the 223rd episode of an Unearthly Podcast, streaming live on the 6th of September 2017 and featuring the Time Meddler, written by Dennis Spooner and starring William Hartnell as the Doctor, Maureen O'Brien as Vicky, Peter Purves as Stephen, and featuring Peter Buttersworth as the Monk. I am Bill Sylvia, the Man in Black, and with me are Mad Matt Winchell.
I hope you all enjoyed the non-yakety sax version of yakety sax.
Randy Ronson McCulloch,
Yo.
Aaron Romeo Moon Burke,
Hello.
Tim the Enchanter Sheridan,
Hey-ho!
and Thomas Fireheart.
I escaped the void, and I'm back.
I cannot
Back to
remember.
the black hole.
I cannot remember the last time I said starring William Hartnell in an opening. It's been a while.
Yeah. Let's see. When was the last time we did a First Doctor?
It's been about a year at least.
It has been a while.
I think it might have been the 10th Planet.
Maybe, and that's almost 2 years now.
No, it would have been Dalek's Master Plan.
Master Plan. Okay.
Episode 104. Jeez, yeah, we've done it.
Ironically, the sequel in part to this episode, and
Actually, no, prequel.
No. Yeah.
Because this happens right after the chase, which we did right before that.
Yeah.
right. But what I'm saying is, this episode introduces the monk, and that's the second episode with the monk.
Correct. Oh, so we're doing them in reverse order, but hey, guess what? It's Doctor Who. That happens.
And yes, this
Yeah,
episode does
wibbly
directly
wobbly.
follow.
Wibbly wobbly, timey wobbly.
You're saying, Bill?
I was saying yes, this episode does directly follow from the chase to the point where
They're still remarking
that
on
featured into my notes for the whatchamacalled.
Well, you know,
for
this
the
is
quick
this
review,
is
yeah.
back during the first couple seasons of Doctor Who, where each episode pretty much followed everything else in a serial format. So every episode ended with a lead in to the next episode. And then they dropped that more or less when season 3 came out, and that's also when they started just calling things by one title and adding, the parts.
Yeah, I noticed that this one had different names for each episode again.
And that's something that they did.
That's one thing I wondered. When they originally aired these episodes, did they have previously on segments, or were you
Nope.
just like
Um,
right where you're off?
No, what they usually did is they showed the last 2 to 3 minutes of the previous episode.
Last minute,
That-
usually.
That's
Yeah.
also
Yeah.
part of why the pacing is so slow. Their episodes are written in such a way that they expect you to forget about half the plot in between weeks, so they re-explain things a lot.
Kind of annoying when you're watching them en masse.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that,
I didn't notice it too much this episode.
I don't think
thankfully.
they thought people would be watching it like that.
Well, yeah,
But-
they didn't think that someone would invent a machine to record an episode and watch it again at a
Yeah,
later date.
remember, this was 1967, and VHS did not come out until the late 70s, early 80s.
For
No, I
another
wanna
15
see-
minutes or so, 15 years or so, yeah.
Yeah, it was. I mean, the late 70s was when VHS was introduced, but it didn't become marketable really till the 80s.
Yeah, I remember seeing an article about someone writing about the difference between Netflix-only shows and stuff that used to be on TV. For example, the difference between watching that werewolf one, was it Something Grove? And
I know which one you're
X-Files.
talking about, and X-Files, yeah.
And where the X-Files, they usually explain what's going on even during like episode or like the commercial breaks and stuff. When they come back, they make maybe a brief, summary of what's going on. Yeah, that's why, because the Netflix shows and stuff are meant to be binge watched back to back.
So, the first home video device that I've never heard of came out 5 years after this episode. The Betamax came out 9 years later. After
Yeah.
this episode, I mean, not after that, and then the VHS the following year.
Yeah, because Betamax and VHS were direct competitors with each other.
I hear Betamax was better, but for some reason beat out VHS.
The quality was better, but
Hmm.
VHS had the easier access to tape and retape stuff.
Wasn't
so it's easier
Laserdisc
to
about the
use.
same?
Yeah. Has there ever been Doctor Who on Laserdisc?
Not that I'm aware
No.
of.
Laserdisc is one of those
spec.
really fucked up formats. It came out, I think, in the very early 80s.
78.
Yeah, it did come out in 78.
Yeah.
It peaked in the early to mid 80s, and then it died a horrible death when DVDs were invented.
Well, not even then. I mean, that died a horrible death before the 90s.
It was still
And
limping
VHS was still a very strong medium.
Its peak, even at its peak, it was nowhere near the level of VHS.
In the 90s, I never saw a Betamax or a Laserdisc.
I saw.
I remember seeing
Never.
Laserdiscs like for movies that were made in the.
Anyways, we're going on quite a tangent.
Yeah.
That's fine, considering the fact that tonight we have very little news.
Yep.
There is almost
Yes,
no
we can
news.
go-
I
we
had
can-
to
we can
scour
start
the
that
internet to find what little news there was. Our normal news source, Doctor Who News.net, in the past week has had one article.
Wow.
One!
Wow.
And then I scoured Cultbox, our secondary source, and I turned out with two articles that were actually just one article when I found the source.
There is an article Radio Times used that you skip, but it's really a fluff article anyway, so we'll only cover that if you
I will
have
say
time.
this, Stephen Moffat said some stuff about Jodie Whittaker's first performance, but it's all pretty boilerplate. It was pretty freaking boring as an article.
Typical dry,
Let-
she seems to be doing a great job kind of
Let
deal.
me guess. What he basically said was you should watch the Christmas special.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
There were no spoilers or
Because
anything.
Because he's
No
not going to
real
poison
reason
his
to
last
report it.
episode, obviously.
So we're going to go through the news, and then we're going to do the 5-minute challenge, which normally would be about an hour in, but the news is not going to take that long, even if we tangent. And then the episode review, our final thoughts and ratings.
What if we co-sign?
Oh, if we what?
I said, what if we co-sign?
No. Okay, so even birthdays are light this week.
Three of them. That's our
there are
usual.
3 birthdays. No, usually it's about 6. It's about 5 to 6. And this time it's 3. Starting on the 31st of August, the day after our last podcast, was Roy Castle, who played Ian in Doctor Who and the Daleks. He would have been 85, but he died in 1994 of lung cancer at the age of 62. He was popular enough that he does have his own lung cancer charity society in England. Because while looking him up, I found a lot of links to that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he was very big. I mean, he wasn't just an actor. He was a comedian. He was a singer and musician. Yeah, he was very big on jazz. So he was a huge, jack of all trades talent when he got diagnosed with lung cancer and eventually died. He even had his own show that he was doing pretty much up to the point that he died. I can't remember its name. But he was big on it.
That's kind of a shame.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's always a shame when somebody dies of cancer. Cancer kills everybody. And it's always a shame when they die because they're usually in the middle of something. Record Breakers, that was the name of his show.
Oh.
So moving on to the 1st of September was Bern Gorman, who you'd know as Owen Harper in Torchwood, turned 43. The last year, Bern has been in a few episodes of Stan Lee's Lucky Man and Jamestown. He's also recently reprised his role as Dr. Herman Gottlieb in Pacific Rim Uprising, which is just finished filming and is currently in post-production.
I saw a couple years ago in a ghost movie, but I'm forgetting the name of it. It was
movie.
It had red, crimson, or scarlet, or something like that.
Was it Crimson Peak?
Crimson Peak, that's the one.
Yeah. He's done a few things, but I was only looking into what he did in the last year.
Last couple of years,
So if his credits didn't say 2016 or 2017, I ignored them. I added Pacific Rim Uprising because it's technically 2018 and in post.
I only mention it because I think it's the last thing that I personally saw him. unless there was something I forgot about.
I've seen him in little bits and pieces all over the place. Really,
I might.
He's making the rounds these days.
Maybe.
He's done quite a bit. He's become massive kind of geek actor between Doctor Who and Pacific Rim. Because I know I've seen him in at least something else too.
Yeah, with horror movies and everything else. Yeah, he seems to have found his niche and he likes it.
Yep.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Considering Owen was such an asshole.
Yeah.
Let's see.
He's done some much more interesting characters that were less
Yes,
assholes.
I mean, you go back a little bit. He was in Game of Thrones for 4 episodes.
Yeah.
So he plays a variety of characters, so he's not in danger of being typecast. At least.
By no means. Yeah.
Yeah, he's.
And he has a cool name. It's like, who are you? I'm Burn Gorman. You burn Gorman? Why would you burn Gorman? Gorman's a sweet man.
That is a sci-fi name.
It is. Burn Gorman. Yeah, it sounds like somebody who should be doing like Hollywood special effects.
Burn Gorman.
Anyway, happy birthday, Burn. For September, we have also Torchwood alumni Kai Owen, who plays Reese Williams. He recently wrapped up playing Pete Buchanan on Hollyoaks and is now completely devoting his time to Big Finish's monthly Torchwood line. Yay. Seriously, all of his credits within the last several months, all of it has been Torchwood audios.
Hey, he likes coming back to the show. You can't argue with him on that.
Well, now that there's a monthly thing, yeah, he's all over that. And that's the end of our birthdays. And there were no lost stories, so we're going on to our previous episodes.
No one died this week.
Aaron?
Yay! All right, so coming up, I believe, let me just double check that I've got the right one here. Yep, Peter Capaldi had a very nerdy complaint about the return of the Mondasian Spider-Man, according to the Radio Times.
The what?
Yeah, the Mondasian Cybermen, not Spider-Man. That would be the interesting crossover.
Wait, did I guys hear Spider-Man from?
I definitely heard
totally
Spider-Man.
Oh, okay. Well,
you're looking at the ceiling while reading this? Do I need to come in there with the Swiffer?
All right, so
I can't stop laughing.
Well, there is a cyber. Doesn't he in the Tokusatsu for Spider-Man have a giant spider robot?
Yes, he does.
There you go.
Leopardon.
He called on Leopardon. Yes.
What? Who doesn't in Tokusatsu have either a giant robot or a giant monster?
The thing is,
he was the first to have a giant robot.
Yeah, he was the first to introduce it and make it a real big thing.
He introduced the trope. Spider-Man, of all people, did.
Right, so about halfway through the article, they finally mention what the big complaint was, and it's basically that they have gloves on their hands. One of the great things about them is that they had bare hands.
Yeah, this is like
nerdy complaints.
This is the true nerd rage moment of Peter Capaldi. They're showing him these new Cybermen. They're showing them, wow, they stole my picture. I made this picture.
Oh, wait, did they?
Really?
Yes.
Here's that one.
And basically, Rachel Talalay explained that the reason why she put gloves on the new Mondasian Spider-Man was to hide Pearl Mackey's skin color.
I heard you say Spider-Man again.
Yes.
Yep. Me too.
What?
Every time you say Cyberman, you speak through too fast and says
Cyberman. Is my microphone cutting out or something? I'm totally not saying Spider-Man.
I don't think we can not hear it anymore.
Oh my.
So even if I say it correctly, it's always going to come out as Spider-Man. So I might as well just pronounce it as Spider-Man.
I think anytime someone says the word, it'll be Spider-Man.
I'm just picturing Peter Capaldi tweeting at Steven, like, worst Cybermen ever.
Why do they have gloves? They don't have gloves. You suck so hard, designers. Why? Why'd you do this?
I mean, I'm looking at so many other things in this costume you could nerd rage on.
Yeah.
Why is
Where
the
are the
lamp
stripes?
so
Why are the
small?
stripes? Where are the extra hoses?
We criticized the bottom half of the chest plate, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
For being a little too different,
It would have been better if they had left it bare, because then there's like a little bit more humanity shining through on it.
But
Well,
These
that
are
was
supposed to be early
Capaldi's
Cybermen.
argument.
Yeah.
The problem was that from the directorial standpoint is they didn't want you to know that was Pearl Mackie until she did the reveal herself.
Right.
They could have just hidden her hands.
Yeah,
They could have literally shot around it and it wouldn't. Yeah, they could have literally shot around it and would have been unnoticeable.
Well, yeah, they could have even had the Master and Missy like standing in front of her slightly to obscure
They
her
didn't
hands.
show up until after.
All right.
But still, they could have had her in the closet with her hands hidden in shadow,
And
have
you
her
weren't to
stand
notice.
up, but then cut up to her upper torso so you can't really see her hands as she stands up, and then have the Cybermen kind of slowly loom over them, because the arms on the Cybermen are long enough that you can't really tell.
Unless she's bringing up her hands to do something.
Which she wasn't really.
Well, to be fair, she has to hold her hands in front of her anytime she speaks. So.
Well, you could still shoot around that. You know, you could see.
I think
you could even make that the focus of the reveal, is that you see her hand jut to the little radio dial, and you notice that it's a black woman's hand.
I think Talele just was like, no, that's just way too much of a film editing nightmare.
There's also the fact that it's entirely possible the suit actor was white playing.
That's also this possibility.
Shit, yeah, I never
it might have not
realized
actually
that,
been her. It might have not been Pearl Mackie in it.
Yeah, I always just assumed it was the same.
They
but
probably
still,
don't want to say that to kind of, break the magic, but that's entirely a possibility.
Yeah.
Kayfabe.
Now the thing is,
and that's how you also keep all these Cybermen uniforms.
Twice about this back in the '60s.
No, they wouldn't.
Oh, what? That was a black person, and now they put it in a cyber suit, and now it's a white person? Well, whatever.
It's like, they not only turned her into a Cyberman, they switched her hands.
Not her hands.
Yeah. Somewhere during the cyberization process, she got vitiligo. Yeah, that's it.
And then for the next 40 years, people would write episodes about how the Cybermen were secretly a white supremacist plot.
Oh, jeez.
Okay, so now I have the mental image of Cybermen goose stepping now. Thank you, Bill.
They already kind of do.
They almost do. They definitely march.
They march, but they don't fully, with the leg goose stepping.
Like
it's a small step away from it.
With them raising the hand into the Sig Heil every time they move, and I'm just seeing that with Cybermen now. Yeah.
All right.
Daleks are supposed to be the Nazi.
I'll have to hurt you for this one, Bill.
See, I'm seeing the hammers from the wall now.
All right, Tim, want to tell us the next thing Peter Capaldi said?
Okay, Peter Capaldi is always being cheeky, and he hints that we may see Clara in the upcoming Christmas special. And
Maisie, is that a pun? Is me coming back? No, I'm kidding.
It's just that the words "may see" are in quotation marks. It says, his quote, "I think you may. I'll see her again. You may see her again too. But I won't tell. I won't spoil things. You may see her. She's still there. Everyone in Doctor Who is still there," the actor added.
This was at San Francisco Comic Con, by the way.
Yep. Yeah.
So it was a direct, panel discussion. So it's obviously he can't say anything, but he's definitely dropping hints.
Mm-hmm. So obviously she's going to make at least a very quick guest appearance, if nothing else.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And we've heard that rumor before, but that's the closest we've gotten to any form of confirmation by anyone related to the program.
To the program. So yeah, and it's coming from the big actor of the show. So
at least for the first, 90% of it, anyway.
Mm-hmm. So next is Bill, I believe. You have a...
Yep. So Jodie Whittaker also said some words, this time to the Rolling Stone. This was about her casting as the Doctor. From her before portion, she says, "I'm the type of person that you'd walk past and go, I think I went to school with her, or I know her and I can't quite place it. It certainly isn't, I know her full name and can tell you who she is."
Well, that's about to change.
Yep. Oh, it's already changed, of course. She mentions she has no idea who, but she knows she was up against other actresses. It was very much that Chibnall was auditioning people for the first female Doctor.
So, despite Chibnall saying in interviews, I'm not looking specifically for a female Doctor or a male Doctor or a white Doctor or a black Doctor, I'm looking for the best actor to play the Doctor, he was obviously looking for a female Doctor.
Yeah.
Apparently she found out she had the role. Well, this doesn't quite match up with what she said before, so it might be a little cheeky. She said that she had 4 hours time from when. Oh no, never. Okay, never mind. No, that's not what she said. That's the way the article is written. It was a little confusing. So this is not about the day she found out about the role, just the morning of the reveal. She was walking down the street saying, "This is so weird. Right now I'm completely anonymous. I've got 4 hours time."
Yep. It did mention the fact that she is known since March. So
oh yeah, so she found it out in March, and the reveal actually happened in July.
Yeah.
So she had 4 months in which she had to sit on that news.
She's also her response to people who are flipping their crap about a woman in the TARDIS. She says, "I'm playing an alien and gender is not a part of that." And this part's not a direct quote, but it says, in her mind, the genderlessness of the role makes the iconic part more feminist. She says, "A moment like this of being the first woman cast as something, it makes you really think about your sex, whereas actually what you want to do is play a part where your gender is irrelevant. I'm a woman, so I don't need to play that. And so for me, this was the most freeing experience because there's no right or wrong way to do it. The rules went out the window."
So you say, Jodie, but you're still going to be under a microscope.
Oh, I guarantee you she'll be under a microscope from both sides.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if they step bounds in either direction too far, the people are going to freak.
To be fair,
Typical.
I mean, what her character does will be under a microscope, but a lot of that will be the things that are outside her hands. It'll be the writing and such.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah.
I don't think her acting choices are going. I mean, she's going to make acting choices, but I don't think that they're in that way going to make or break the character.
Yeah, it's going to come down to the writing and the production and her acting, but it's going to be an effect of all three of those.
Yeah.
The only way that her acting will fail is if she cannot pull off the gravitas that you need to play the Doctor. That certain level of charisma that you see the Doctor, pretty much all the Doctors have. If she can't pull that off, she's going to fail. Or she's going to wind up like Peter Davison as kind of a meh.
Yeah. Yeah, there are people for whom he's their favorite Doctor. So.
I know, but if you really, if you look at his performance.
No, I absolutely agree with you. I'm just.
I don't think he did a bad performance. He just did a very held back performance, and that's not exactly always the way to go about it.
If you look at him compared to the other doctors, each of them had that moment, or not that moment, but that basically that level of look at me. I mean, Hartnell had it, but he had it in a way. Troughton had it in that comedic way. Pertwee just fucking had it. Baker just fucking had it.
Pertwee and Tom definitely had it.
Colin Baker had it in a bad way. Sylvester
Not totally his fault.
He still had a few great, strong, positive moments as well in Trial of the Time.
Here and there throughout, but a lot of it was bad though because
McGannis had it. Eccleston's had it. Tennett's had it. Smith kind of had it, and Capaldi definitely had it. So it's just something about the Doctor that when they're on the screen, your eyes are drawn to that person. If Jodie Whittaker can't pull that off, it's going to slip rating. And the writing has to support that structure. It's just how the show works. Anyway, no, my big issue with the article was the fact that it basically just states to us directly that the first thing that we've heard from new showrunner Chris Chibnall was a lie.
Was most likely a lie. Because he was apparently pushing to get a woman in there.
And that bothers me is the fact that the new showrunner, the first thing out of his mouth is lying to us in a way in trying to be political about it. If he was looking to cast a woman, he should have just fucking said it. And
I think his mindset was the whole it's easier to get forgiveness than permission in terms of how the fans would react.
Yeah, except I'm not yelling at him for casting a woman. I'm yelling at him now for lying to us.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a big difference there.
The Doctor Who showrunner has always,
what's the difference between lying
in my
and
time as a fan, has always lied to us. But at least I haven't had to deal with 6 months of quote-unquote fans shitting themselves because a woman steps into the TARDIS. I've only had to deal with it for about a month and a half now. And based on their tweets, I do think they're shitting themselves. Literally.
Some of them are, yeah.
Because they're toddlers.
Yeah, the thing is, there's always this massive negative feedback whenever there's a new Doctor.
No matter who it is, and no matter what side of whatever argument that pops up, it's just
Capaldi had
crazy.
Negative feedback. Matt Smith had negative feedback.
Capaldi got a lot of unneeded negative feedback.
And before that was pre-internet, so we don't know about what happened in the early days. But it's always the same thing. Oh, they're gonna ruin the show. Oh, I'm never gonna watch it again.
I'm sure if you read the DWM comment section, it'll probably be very much like Twitter.
Yeah, it's people are always bitching because they don't like change.
Yeah.
So I'm pretty sure that some of these people that are bitching that Jodie Whittaker will be the worst thing to happen to Doctor Who are going to sit down, watch her, and keep watching because it's what's happened. So, this is what's happening. The Doctor's going to be a woman. You don't like it, suck it up, Buttercup.
Meanwhile, on Tumblr, not my doctor, not my doctor.
Yeah, I know. Like I said, suck it up, Buttercup, piss or get off the pot. Okay. So, we have some more news about the Series 10 box set that's due out in November. We still do not have an official announcement on the UK release. That still has not been set. But we do know the US one is coming out in November, and we know this is what we're getting as part of the packages of extras. Deleted scenes, audio commentary, an inside look into each episode, article, Becoming the Companion, One of those little,
A specialty focusing on Pearl Mackie for the season, yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
We still don't have the number on the amount of commentaries and deleted scenes that we're going to get. And we're pretty sure when the UK release comes out, it'll probably have at least these same extras that are here.
Mm-hmm. Usually do. They're usually pretty fair about that.
And according to Amazon, its release date is scheduled for 11/14.
Fair enough.
So, and this may not be the final list of extra features, but this is what they've announced now.
That's why they're probably not announcing official numbers on anything either, is because they're probably still collecting everything and seeing where it goes.
Yep. All right, that's it for the Series 10 DVD. Aaron.
Yeah, DVD next.
Okay, so we've got new in book news. We've got the Black Archive number 13, Human Nature, Family of Blood.
Ah.
All right. What was that?
Sorry, you just your microphone screeched.
Really? Weird.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're coming in real powerful for some reason.
I don't know what to do with that. Is it still coming in powerful, or is it just a temporary thing?
Are you using the headset?
Yeah.
Tweak it a little bit away from your mouth, just a little bit.
Like that?
That sounds fine. Yeah, go ahead.
Alright. Okay, weird. Alright, so anyway, we've got the Black Archive number 13, Human Nature, Family of Blood. This is going to be the latest issue from Dark Archive, looking at the production of the 10th Doctor. It's going to be released, or it has already just been released. Alright, so it's going to be basically a behind the scenes look. It's, even in, the summary says, even in one of the 21st century Doctor Who's more complex seasons, Human Nature and Family of Blood is a standout story. A narrative and mythic ambitions which illuminates the true nature and character of the Doctor through the courage and failings of his unknowing human alter ego, John Smith. So, of course, it's going to be looking into the adaptation of the original Doctor Who novel concerning this. That's apparently scriptwriter Paul Cornell's Human Nature. So, and then also a few other items. Story of a god who becomes human and must sacrifice his life to save the world. Yeah, so it's basically, I believe this is just a behind the scenes kind of look at a lot of this stuff. Anyone else have anything to say about it?
Yeah, this is not the first time we've heard about them. But yeah, this seems to be they talk to the people that were behind the production and get some background information on how things went.
Mm-hmm. Mind you, this one's a little bit interesting. As Human Nature, Family of Blood, I believe, is the only one that's a direct adaptation from a novel. There have been episodes that have been based on stuff that came from a novel, like Dalek was based on Jubilee, but it did not follow the exact same plot as Jubilee.
Or that were based on short stories like Blink.
But this was the first time that somebody had taken one of the Virgin or BBC book novels and rewrote it as a screenplay for the actual air. So that in itself makes Human Nature, Family of Blood fairly unique.
Also, what makes it unique is that they also got the original story writer to come back and redo the script. If I'm not mistaken.
How does it sound?
Well,
now?
it was Paul Cornell.
Mm-hmm. What's that, Aaron?
How does it sound now? Is it nice?
You're a little bit more quiet.
Volume?
I can tweak you up. I was actually trying to tweak you down, so.
Alright, apparently input sensitivity was automatically turned on because I always, in order to get Discord to work on the laptop here, I always have to reset my voice. And
actually, now you're cutting in and out, so you might want to turn up your sensitivity a little bit. Sorry, technical issues, they happen.
Yeah, every now and then.
Nowadays. How's that?
I would have to wait and see. Seems fine at the moment.
Okay.
Anyway, anything else we want to mention on this quick?
No, it just seems fairly cut and dry.
Candy Jar Books doesn't have news. It must be a terrible week.
Or if they hadn't,
they
had news, it didn't go to it
usual
didn't
sources.
make it to DoctorWhoNews.net.
They didn't have another book to shill us on yet, so.
We do, however, have Big Finish news, Tim.
Yes, we do have Big Finish news. Nothing is out right now, but we have upcoming releases. Very anticipated upcoming releases. The rather obscure plot device known as the Time War is going to be given an epic. The Time War stars Paul McGann as the 8th Doctor, and he's joined by a new companion, Bliss, played by Rocky Takrar. That almost sounds like a Star Wars name.
Why do we keep naming companions after things like emotion?
I don't know.
Because it's the 21st century.
What I'd like to know is why the actress sounds like she's been named after a Stallone
Bliss.
character.
Wasn't that the name of the virus that wiped out all the people on New Earth?
Yes, I believe it was.
I think so, yeah.
The Time War consists of 4 new stories written by John Dorney and Matt Fitton. The first story is The Starship of Theseus by John Dorney, and then Echoes of War by Matt Fitton, The Conscript by Matt Fitton, and One Life by John Dorney.
But hey, some more Paul McGann.
I hope I don't have to hear Paul yelling YOLO.
Was that a thing?
I'm saying it's named One Life, so there is that risk.
Who wants to live forever? Whee!
I'll take that one.
No, I hope we never hear a doctor yelling YOLO. God knows if, like, Stephen Moffat had done something, that would have been the next Doctor's catchphrase.
No, if they do it only once, and as soon as they did whatever they were going to do, they're like, yeah, I've never shot that again.
I'm a little surprised that Stephen never did it, actually, especially with the personalities of his 2 doctors.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, David Tennant had Al-Anji. And then Matt Smith had Geronimo.
But Matt Smith also had the I da 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 now. The da 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 is cool.
Yes, but that wasn't his "I'm charging into battle" phrase.
No,
that
but I
was
mean,
Geronimo.
I could see him do a I say YOLO now. YOLO is cool, and depending on the companion, they hopefully would have slapped him.
River Song would have then would have like
backhand
Kobe
him and tell him never again. And that would have been one of the few times that River Song would have redeemed herself.
The only time, if I ever hear the Doctor say that, and I may have to write this, provided I live long enough to write it, is, him say that, and then it's like, no, I'm never going to do that again. That's garbage.
That's the one I went with, yeah. I'm never doing that again. That was terrible. Yeah. Anyways, I survived that. Thank goodness this is not my last catchphrase.
Also coming soon is Bernice Summerfield True Stories. The Big Finish books are back. And there's an little interview with the editor and one of the writers of the upcoming short story collection on Benny's Unbound Adventures.
All right.
I'm out of drink.
So this is a novel, not an audio, but it's still Big Finish.
Right.
Different.
They do them from time to time, and I'm pretty sure only in the Bernice Summerfield line.
No, I think they've done a couple of them in Doctor Who, but it's very rare because they have to be very careful not to step on the Virgin and BBC lines.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas they've pretty much eaten the Virgin line of Bernice.
Yeah, they've pretty much taken that one over because I don't think BBC was interested.
BBC wasn't interested, but the fans are, so...
Although Bernice did appear in a 12th Doctor BBC novel a year or two ago.
But they still have largely given the character to Big Finish to do.
Right.
You can pre-order this new Benny novel now. Ernie Summerfield True Stories will be available in September as a hardback novel and an ebook for £16.99 and £12.99, or you can get a digital audiobook for $9.99. Doesn't say who's going to read the audiobook, though.
Well, hopefully it's Bernice. We'll read the audiobook, but we can't guarantee that.
If we click it, does anything come up or nothing?
Let me
Read by
see.
Lisa Bowerman.
Let's
So
see.
yeah, it's,
Okay.
All right.
Please.
I'm pretty sure that one of the recording booths has just been made into a cot for Lisa at this point.
No, she has her room in the back, not one of the recording booths, because she also directs and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So she just has a room in
That's
the
the thing.
back.
She needs to be on call to direct or record at a moment's notice. If she's dead asleep, Lisa, you're directing this. Here's a bacon sandwich. Get in there.
She's out there in a bathrobe, just
Just relaxing between gigs.
no. They called her right out of bed, so she's right out there in a dressing gown, just directing something. Her hair still all bedhead frizzed. No,
I'm
no.
sure,
Say
I'm
that
sure by the
again
time she
with a
got
little
there,
more
she tied it
feeling.
back or something.
Mhm.
Anyway,
that does it for our Big Finish news. Bill, you put in another article?
Yep. So I'm sending this through Discord because I don't think Matt probably didn't see it yet. This is it's been published in a few places as more or less a fluff piece, but since there are people responding to it, I figure we might as well mention it. Did she say this at a convention? Yes, she said it. Okay, she said it at a couple conventions, not naming them.
oh my.
But basically, Billy Piper is of the opinion that if Rose Tyler was still with the main universe Doctor, that unlike the Curse of Fatal Death companion, whose name I forgot to look up, she would not have left the Doctor upon becoming Jodie Whittaker. That she would still be in love with the Doctor. Most of the negative feedback I've seen are just people that don't like the Rose Doctor pairing to begin with. But other than that,
in which case,
I
I can understand some of it, not all of it.
Right. I don't think there has been any particularly homophobic or biphobic responses to it, thankfully. And if they have been, then
they've been very
thankfully
minor
haven't
and
seen
very
them.
quiet.
It does make me raise an eyebrow at Billy Piper's sexuality, but
Yeah. And then again, I guess after after playing a call girl for a while, you're probably a bit as open-minded as someone from the 52nd century.
yeah. New Billy and John
I'm pretty sure she had
Barrowman
I'm pretty sure she had at least one lesbian scene in Call Girl. So
Yeah, like I said, I'm not sure New Billy and John Barrowman should be allowed in the same room anymore.
Oh my.
But that's really all there is to say about that piece, and
Oh, the decay today.
just the fact that it's being shared in so many places is the main thing that causes me to mention it, and the fact that it's Slow News Day.
It's Slow News Day because we just finished this article. We still got 15 minutes left before the hour mark.
So has anybody seen any movies?
Anybody
No.
seen any geeky stuff that you want to talk about?
I finally started back watching Game of Thrones.
Okay.
Yep. I'm getting caught up. I'm in season 7 already. I think season 7, episode 2.
I'm still back in season 3, but that means I finally managed to get through season 2.
I've seen you make comments on Facebook that implied you are farther past that, unless you just listened to spoilers.
Who, me?
Yeah.
They just said both said who, me, and you just said yeah.
Randy.
That wouldn't be those replies I made in the I guess that was the old City of Heroes channel to the
Maybe they were replies to comments on I think it was one of those posts about like the last TV show you watched is now saving you or whatever.
Yeah, you're a kid, you're being held hostage. And it was just a couple of comments. I know a little bit more than I should.
Oh, that's right. You were talking. You were only. That's right. It was just that you mentioned the list, and the list actually I think was around in season 3. So
it was around in season 2.
Okay.
Because she was reciting that list in her sleep in Harrenhal. So yeah. She's had that list for a while. And I have heard other minor rumors and seen little bits and pieces here and there. Enough to know how long it fucking takes to rescue Jaime Lannister, which was my other comment there. Is somebody listed as the last person they saw was Cersei Lannister, and I'm like, well, you're right fucked then, aren't you? How long did it take her to rescue her own brother? How many seasons?
I haven't seen any new movies, but I did see in Australia there's a Studio Ghibli kind of thing going on at the moment, and I saw Howl's Moving Castle and Arrietty on the weekend gone.
I'm not sure about the second one. The first one's pretty good.
It's funny because I didn't even know that Arrietty was an adaptation of The Borrowers, but it is. So that was kind of interesting.
I'm not remembering that one at all for some reason. I thought I knew
It's
most
one
of
of the.
movies.
It's like, I don't know if it's the newest one, but it's definitely one of the newer ones.
Okay.
From them. Which is funny because I think it's the newest one that we got up here because we only got 6. This weekend I'm seeing. Actually, no. Tomorrow my time I'm seeing Kiki's Delivery Service, and then on Sunday, it's Ponyo, I think.
Yeah, because Studio Ghibli is officially off production right now. Miyazaki is still planning on making like a few short films. He's already made one about a caterpillar, but Studio Panak is where most of the animators and the head animators and the creators went after Studio Ghibli tentatively shut down. They could still, get together and reopen Ghibli, but.
Well, also, I think some of those animators are now working with video game companies too, and they've been doing stuff here and there.
Yeah, because I think Ni no Kuni 2 is coming out.
I think that's the one I heard about too. It's actually being a PC port.
Still one of my favorite old Miyazaki Ghibli movies is Porco Rosso. That was always one of my favorites. And I know.
I believe I still have. I believe the only movie of his I own is still Mononoke.
Me too. I own that. I don't know anything else, but I have seen other.
Yeah, like Spirited Away. Before they did this, Spirited Away was actually the only Ghibli film I'd ever seen. So
that's not one of my.
Why I was.
I've seen a couple of his other ones, but Mononoke is the only one I actually own right now. I don't see his stuff out available often enough.
Yeah, I started with Mononoke and I started collecting the ones that came out after that. But no, I think it was Anime Club one time. We watched a couple of Ghibli movies, a couple of Miyazaki films at the end of the night, and Porco Rosso was one of them, and I'm like, this is awesome.
Yeah, I kind of started losing interest in them after Howl's Moving Castle came out. It just didn't seem to be as well thought out, and it was kind of convoluted compared to some of the other stuff I'd seen from them, so. But.
I believe that movie I saw recently, not recently, a few years ago, The Tale of Princess Kaguya was a Ghibli film.
Yeah, that was a Ghibli film. That was it was not
Miyazaki, but it was.
It was one of the other directors.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. It was by the director of Grave of the Fireflies.
Oh God!
It was.
And Porco Rosso, apparently.
And it was a lot more upbeat. Not that that's saying much.
No, Grave of the Fireflies is never watch Grave of the Fireflies when you're depressed.
It's got the same animation style as My Neighbors the Yamadas, which is kind of that
like watercolor.
It's kind of a watercolor
Any movie that starts with a dialogue and ends, "This is the story of how I died." You
That's
know,
an anime movie.
is not going to be a lot of fun.
Nope.
Then I remember watching it the day after I got fired from my job of 4 years. I laughed the entire time I watched that movie. It was not a healthy laugh, by the way. It was one of those, ooh, I think he's gone nuts now.
Yeah, I can't wait for Mary and the Witch's Flower to come out. We'll see if that's any good.
Random note, and I can't remember why I wanted to know this, but you talking about laughing reminded me. Can you do the loud Joker voice or just the quiet one?
Right now I can't do either. And that's because
Because you'll start coughing.
That's because of the cough and because of my lung capacity right now, or at least my breathing capacity. It's a little diminished. But I usually can do the quiet joke. You know, I can't do the Joker laugh. I cannot. I've tried to do the Joker laugh for like 15 years now.
You know what? I think the reason I wanted to know was in case we ever needed to do the if you explain the joke, there is no joke scream. But I can't remember why I was wondering, specifically.
It was something I think I'd mentioned to Bill. I think we were at the Journey, weren't we?
When you were talking about if you were ever in a panel with Mark Hamill.
Yeah, if I ever went to a convention that had Mark Hamill in it, and he was in one of those just general Star Wars Q&A panels, I would have to raise my hand for it at the end and then basically just grab the mic and go, "Mr. Hamill, would you say the best moment in your career was playing this Luke Clodhopper fellow? Or playing the Clown Prince of Crime, the Joker?" And just let him go with it. Because he would.
Yeah. That, or he would be like, "No, it was definitely Cockknocker."
Oh God. I don't know. There's certain things that Mark Hamill's done in his career that he doesn't want to ever bring to light again.
Slipstream.
What?
Slipstream.
I was actually thinking The Guyver.
The Guyver was the next one on my list. The Guyver.
Yeah.
Which somehow keeps saying that he's the star even though he doesn't star in it.
Well, no, it's not just that. He made that movie under the agreement it would not be shown in America. And then it got shown in America.
I didn't know about that. That's... Ooh. That explains so much about that movie, actually.
Yeah.
By the way, the sequel is way better.
Also doesn't have Mark Hamill.
Also, sadly, does not have Mark Hamill in it, but it's still a much better done movie. Actually has action sequences.
And Cockknocker was, I think, a favor to somebody. Probably Kevin Smith.
Probably Kevin Smith, because Kevin Smith is a nerd like that.
But I know, Mark and I think Carrie Fisher was also in that movie.
Yeah, she was.
Yeah, she was.
She played a nun.
Mm-hmm. It's weird. The weird places Carrie Fisher shows up. I remember seeing her in the Blues Brothers, going, "Holy shit!"
I also remember that's the movie where specifically they asked for George Lucas's okay, and the one thing he said was that they had to abide by the canon lightsaber colors. That was the one demand he had for that movie.
I gotta think of what the fuck George Lucas went when they introduced the bong saber. And it lights up and he freaking tokes from it. It's just like, ah! I could just imagine Lucas's brain exploding. Should not have given them so much leeway.
Well, that's George Lucas for you.
And the fact that he managed to force grab the bong saber. God. Either that, or we could be wrong. Since it was outright parody, George Lucas could have been laughing his ass off too.
Could be.
Yeah.
Because he has at least had a good sense of humor about it.
About parodies, I mean, he used to hang out with what's his face, Chad Vader.
There's that, and also he absolutely adored the people who did was it Junkyard Wars or something?
Hardware Wars.
Hardware Wars.
One of the first well-known Star Wars parodies.
And he absolutely adored them, and even signed stuff whenever anyone came over with props from that movie, that short movie as well.
I remember they used to show it all the time on HBO back in the 80s, and I'm like, is this fucked up Star Wars? What the fuck is this? And then I realized it was a parody of Star Wars with kitchen tools. I'm like, wow, what the hell, man? With the main kit, with the smuggler being called ham salad, and God, it was just wow. It was one of those things where you thought you were stoned even when you weren't, because it was like, what the hell? Can't even remember how long it was. It seemed full length to me, but I was 8.
I only remember the one that looked like it was a spoof of the original trailer, which was probably something like closer to 15 or 20 minutes. But they hit all the major keynotes.
It was 13 minutes long.
Yeah. It's not that long, but they hit all the major keynotes that they needed to. Anyway.
Yeah, that was just hysterical. Anybody else see anything? Read anything?
I did find out that there's a second season of Winona Earp that's on the Sci-Fi Channel website, and that's the only place that it is online right now, I think, except for maybe unless the DVD's out. But so I at some point will be binging that when I actually am not buried under piles of homework.
No, my week has basically been Conan Exiles and trying to catch up with Game of Thrones.
Sorry.
I mean, I think I mentioned last week I caught Voltron and I caught The Tick. And that's really the last real new things I've seen. Other than watching a lot of old reruns on Heroes and Icons. I think that's about it.
Yeah, I've discovered Bookwalker, which is Kodakawa's e-book store for manga and light novels. And the light novels is kind of interesting because it's not as big of a thing as manga, but it's basically, young adult Japanese novels, and also stuff like Vampire Hunter D and whatnot. You can find the original novels on there, translated into English officially. So you can download and put them on your phone and everything and read them. So if you're curious about Japanese light novels, it's a good place to go.
Also, I think the light novels are originally where Record Los War and Slayers came from as well, if I'm not mistaken.
However,
I believe they're novels first.
Provided my brain doesn't completely give out on me, next week I should have a first look review of The Orville. That's due out on Sunday. Seth MacFarlane's new show.
Oh,
The one that he's basically making to look and feel like Star Trek.
With a tongue firmly in cheek, yes.
No, it's not supposed to be as funny, as comedy driven as Family Guy and the rest of his shows.
It's not supposed to be as comedy driven as those, but it's Star Trek with a big sense of humor still.
Yeah,
whereas Star Trek is normally so serious.
It's supposed to be somewhere in that, well, not always, but it's supposed to be somewhere in that line between Star Trek and Galaxy Quest. And apparently Fox wanted it to be closer to Galaxy Quest, and Seth wanted it to be closer to Star Trek. We'll see where that comes out. And, of course, Star Trek Discovery's due out later this month, but I don't have very high hope for that one.
Nope. I'm going to wait back and see what the reviews are like, and I guarantee it's going to be a shit show.
And I know Aaron and I aren't gonna have a movie next week either because Tuesday night I'm having a sleep test done. So I have to be at Research Park at 8:30.
This weekend, I'm going to my nephew's birthday, my first nephew, and then next weekend, I am possibly leaving for a couple days to go visit my grandmother. Belated visit. Wanted to do it sooner, but there have been complications here and there. Anyway, I think it's about time.
Yeah, it's about time.
Yeah.
So, stopwatch is up. Whose turn is it this time? Because I believe I did it
I'll
last
go
week.
for it because I was supposed to do it last week, but I was just not up for it.
Okie doke. Ready whenever you are, Bill.
All right, give me a countdown.
All right. Starting in 3, 2, 1, go.
The TARDIS lands in England. The Doctor and Vicky are alternating exposition for the new companion Stephen as they emerge. They find a space helmet for a cow, which helps them determine that it is 11th century England. 11th century. The Doctor goes ahead and starts exploring. He meets a local woman who keeps him stocked with mead and with local knowledge, which helps him actually figure out the year and the month. Meanwhile, Vicky and Stephen meet a man with a modern wristwatch. The Doctor, in his investigations, goes into a monastery that seems to have popped up overnight and only has one monk. He discovers a gramophone, which is well in advance of the 11th century, and is promptly captured by the aforementioned monk. Vicky and Stephen come looking for the Doctor to talk about the watch that they found and discover that the monk is holding him prisoner. The pair find the Doctor's cell just after the Doctor has escaped through a hidden tunnel. The Doctor doubles back to interrogate the monk as to what he's doing there and what his plan is, but he ends up being caught in a Viking attack in the process. Bother. Too many Viking attacks. I'm not sure how that one ended actually. But Vicky and Stephen discover a TARDIS belonging to the monk and they go inside it. The monk then reveals to the Doctor his plan to lead the Vikings to the cliffs and destroy them. Actually, no. I'm sorry. The Doctor and the monk did overpower that Viking, and for some reason, I just didn't put that in my notes.
Both the monk and the Doctor separately overpowered one of the Vikings each.
Right.
Yeah.
So this conversation was happening while there was a tied-up Viking, and apparently I just did not include that part, that overpowering in my note. The Doctor lectures the monk about interfering with history and enters the monk's TARDIS himself, finding his companions already there. The locals, however, have mistaken the monk's plan for signal fires as him being a Viking spy trying to draw the Vikings to them, and they rush into the monastery, essentially destroying his plan. The Doctor and his companions go to leave, and the monk finds a note from the Doctor. The Doctor has taken the dimensional controls from the monk's TARDIS, making it too small for the monk to get inside. If the monk stays good, the Doctor may return and replace the part. The end.
All right. A second or two, a little slow on that. So, calculating for that, you did it in 2 minutes, 41 seconds.
Not bad for an old four-parter.
Yeah.
There was for an old four-parter and for also script towards middle there.
I wasn't quite sure where to mention the subplot about the TARDIS seeming to be missing, but was actually there the whole time.
Well, it's because it was under the waves.
It just didn't affect the story much.
Yeah, it didn't really affect the story at all, other than people kept trying to look for it.
Well, it was just a vehicle for them to basically not have access to the TARDIS.
And to stay there and continue things and see them through, yeah.
Okay. So what did you like about this episode? And Aaron, you are up first.
All right, so I actually kind of liked the atmosphere of it. It was kind of suitably spooky in some points, especially like around the seemingly abandoned and then re-inhabited monastery. and like even though the monk was kind of making up the spooky kind of chanting and singing of, making it seem like it was occupied by more than just himself, I thought that it was kind of felt pretty spooky, and danger was kind of apparent when there should have been. I also felt that not the Viking, but the Saxon villages, kind of felt they were small, and only a few people would be inhabiting them, like how it would be in historical times in that area. So I thought the music and the setting and everything really kind of helped enforce the fact that this was more historically oriented serial than others, especially than the chase, which seemed to be all over the place.
Yeah.
All right. Bill?
Okay. So this, what my comment's going to involve a bit of backstory, and hopefully it doesn't end up being too long, but it's worth mentioning.
So, yeah, go get a cheese sandwich right now, guys.
So other than the fact that the previous story was a time travel story that involved some historical elements due to time travel, this is the first story of a new genre at the time. Remember, this was 1966. A new genre of Doctor Who, of what has become known as the pseudo-historical, which has more or less become the gold standard for Earth-based Doctor Who stories ever since. Not necessarily that this story is, but that the pseudo-historical genre has more or less replaced the historical genre. And for the first go at to be clear for those who aren't familiar with what I'm saying, that basically means a historical story that is fortified with sci-fi elements such as the presence of a time traveler or Daleks or aliens or something of that nature.
It's basically a historical piece where the villain is something out of sci-fi.
The villain, or sometimes there's a plot device, a meteor, or anything that kind of causes the weird things going on.
Prior to this, the only things out of time or space in the historical pieces has been our main character.
Right.
Yeah.
And here it's, we've got the monk who's interfering, so it's, he's an outside force. That's what's making it from history to pseudo history.
Right.
Okay. Just clarifying for the audience.
And for the first go at this format, I think they did it pretty well. As Aaron mentioned, they hit the historical side of it pretty well. They managed to, very successfully include a Time Lord, even though the word Time Lord hadn't been put together and put onto paper yet. And I, at least, in terms of the format, see no problems there, and think they did a very good job.
Yeah, and this would by and large begin to take over the historical pieces from here on out, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean
there were still
there would be a couple more, but they were not as well, as celebrated, and they just gradually became replaced with pseudo historical.
I think the last actual historical was in the Fifth Doctor era, and that was Black Orchid.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
And that was
the first
in
over
time.
a decade. Yeah.
And I think the main historicals prior to that actually died out in the First Doctor era.
The last historical that was true to the original intent was the second to last First Doctor story, ironically followed by a pseudo historical. There was also one historical in the Second Doctor era, but that was a comedy rather than actually caring about history. And I haven't watched it, but this is what I've seen it described as, and we need to review it at some point. Because it's also the introduction of Jamie.
Oh, the Highlanders.
Yeah. I think that episode is I think that story is entirely missing, which is
it is entirely missing.
It is entirely missing. I think that probably was the last historical of the
and
First and Second Doctors.
I've seen it written that that it shouldn't be considered a historical because the tone is so radically different from the actual historicals, but I haven't seen it firsthand to verify.
There's tone, but then there's also intent, and intent is the main thing, I think.
Well, considering
Content, rather,
considering the gunfighters.
Yeah. Consider the gunfighters.
True.
Yeah.
Gunfighters
Let's
is a
not
different
go
thing
back
altogether.
there.
Oh, we haven't reviewed that
We
one
have
yet.
to review that, and it's just.
I mean, I had to watch it a while back when we were bringing out the worst of Doctor Who and one of our specials. Way back, many seasons ago.
The Gunfighters is one of that last batch, though. I think it's the Gunfighters, then a pseudo historical, then the Smugglers, then a pseudo historical, then the Highlanders.
And then the Highlanders is
But
what
the
Brian finished
Gunfighters
it.
can't be considered a pure historical either because it's come off like a ballad
Right.
with those transition
bad
songs.
ballad.
Oh yes, we will get to it one of these days. Bill still wants to pad out the bottom part. He'll just take a time where we're just going to review every freaking historical that we haven't done. I know, Bill.
And that'll be the punch to the kidneys.
No, because I know that if we review 6 lost stories in a row, the panel will lose their minds, either slowly or quickly.
If we go for 2 or 3 of them, they start to lose their minds.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember the pain of trying to
Get through Cybermen.
Dalek's master plan.
Oh, and Dalek Master Plan. Oh, God. Just kill me slowly, why don't you?
Anyway, Bill said his piece. So, Thomas, you're next. What did you like about the episode overall?
It's one of those things where there's 2, and the first one that comes to mind I feel like someone else might say, so I'll leave that just in case. And I will say the competency of Vicky and Steven, like, they are on their own for like pretty much the entire serial, really, after they step out of the TARDIS. And, you know, rather than getting like, I mean, you know, they do get captured at one point, but like they actually try to. They aren't just kind of whining for the Doctor the whole time. They're out like, well, we might as well actually try and do something.
Well, this was, you know, the era where the companions, by and large, you know, did stuff. I mean, if you look at like Dalek Invasion of Earth, which was, you know, earlier that same season or the end of the previous season, you had companions split up from the Doctor and doing their own thing constantly.
Hell, they had action sequences, technically speaking.
Yeah. Somewhere along the way, they lost that for a while because the companions became, oh, where are you, Doctor? Oh, I got captured.
Yeah, pretty much.
Mm.
I think they suffered from that most in like the 70s and early 80s.
Mm. Yeah, I think it mainly hit me because when I think this was my introduction to Vicky, so it was like, she came off as a very, oh, I don't know if she's gonna, because I had no reference point to Vicky, so it was like, oh, okay, she's competent. That's good to know.
It was a mix because Vicky came on,
beginning of the season, basically.
beginning of the season, right after Susan departed, and then I think they had the Romans and the Chase. I think another episode in there somewhere.
I think the Crusade was somewhere in there.
It might have been the Crusade instead of the Romans. One of those two. Either way.
I think they. Well, yeah. Well, the Romans was the second story because the Rescue and the Romans are sometimes considered like a pair because they're both short serials. But I think the Crusades also was or Crusade. I'm not sure if there's an S there or not. Was during that same season.
The Romans, then the Web Planet, then the Crusade.
Forgot about the web. I was sitting there like there should be a sci-fi story, but I couldn't remember the Web Planet.
I knew the Web Planet was in there because that was the one I knew Vicky from first was the Web Planet and the Romans, because those are the ones I saw. I never saw the Rescue. Is that one missing episodes?
It might be. I know it's her intro story.
Yep. Let's see. The Rescue. No, it's both episodes have been retained. For whatever reason, I always missed that one when it was on PBS. I'm gonna have to watch that one.
Anywho,
But yeah, the Rescue Romans, Red Planet, the Crusade, the Space Museum, the Chase, and then this one. So there's several episodes in there where you get to see Vicky. This is the first one really where you see Steven in the full-on companion mode.
Yes,
However,
Steven was introduced in the last episode of The Chase. I think he was a prisoner of the Mechanoids?
the
Mechanoids.
Yeah, the Mechanoids. Yeah, he was introduced like halfway through that serial, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was later than that. I think
No,
it was
it was halfway.
It wasn't halfway. It was, I think it wasn't just the last episode. I think it was the last two.
Oh yeah, because the last two are set on that planet, because that's where you had the
Mechanus,
the fake doctor.
Yeah, that's where you got that. And prior to that, it was mostly them running through time and space, being pursued by Daleks. So Steven didn't show up till they wound up on Mechanus, which, like we said, last two episodes. So we've seen. So if you were watching these serial style back in 1965, you would get to notice the fact that this technically would have been the third episode Steven was in. So you've seen about an hour of him prior to this, but this is his first time actually being TARDIS crew, rather than just a secondary figure that's on the planet they're there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And he has his moments of up and down already.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, Tim, how about you? What did you like about the episode overall?
I really liked how the supporting characters, like the historical characters, seemed real and of their time, and not just, yes, we really are Saxons and Vikings. See, look, we have pitchforks. It seemed like before in Doctor Who, it always seemed like the historical people just seemed like people in costumes and not actual so like there was a realism to this story that I noticed.
So what? Mind if I ask what historicals you're comparing it to?
I'm comparing it to the Aztecs.
The Aztecs was okay.
I never had any problem with the acting in the Aztecs.
Yeah.
Just the Aztecs or others as well?
I can't really think of any specific examples. I'll have to go back and watch it, but I just got the buzz I got from this episode was that.
So the thing is that you lacked the knowledge of some of the historicals, and yeah, they could be chancy, but this one was one that stood out to you because you finally saw it recently.
Mm-hmm. But I mean, if he feels this is one of the better ones, that's still a valid positive.
Yeah, it is.
So.
Yeah, I was just wondering. We haven't reviewed many.
Yeah, we haven't reviewed enough of historicals, to be honest.
So many,
we need to go
so many of them are missing.
Yeah, some of the better ones are missing.
I would love to review Marco Polo, but
one of the better ones.
Yeah,
and it's gone.
I did like the.
I hate Telestar. Hate them so much.
Especially like the performances by the Vikings, I thought were especially good.
Actually, yeah, they were actually really good as Vikings, whoever they picked for those roles.
Except for the Viking ships. I know where they got that footage. That's just wrong.
As soon as I saw the Viking ship, my mind went, we want you. We want you.
It's a new recruit. So anyway, as a side note here, the scene where he's looking through the binoculars and looking at the Viking ships, that scene was taken from a 1947 newsreel of a reenactment of a Viking raid of England, as somebody had basically made a longboat and sailed it from Norway to England. And it was interspersed with, the scenes that they were showing were interspersed with the crowd holding up signs saying, "Welcome to Britain." the longboat going past what looked to be like a cruise liner. And you know, it's like they had to be very selective in cutting this and trying to make it historical.
Yeah. That's probably why they didn't show much of the boat.
Because you notice the guys rowing the boat didn't look much like Vikings.
They didn't show them long enough to really notice.
Yeah.
Other than the one guy that's walking in the middle of it.
Mm.
Yeah, it was one of the extras on the DVD shows the restoration work that they had to do in this episode to restore it from some of the crappier, and they fixed some of the crappier effects.
Mm.
Like the TARDIS materialization kind of caused the screen to waver and fluctuate, and they kind of went through a post-production on it and fixed that. It was kind of an interesting bit. Anyway, Matt, you're up. What did you like about the episode overall?
I have to say this is one of the I don't remember this episode in particularly because I must have skimmed through it awfully quickly. But I know that this is probably one of the most quotable First Doctor episodes. What do you think this is? A space helmet for a cow? I have to also say that this is probably William Hartnell, one of his best stories as well.
Damn it, Matt.
Oh
Now, I think that quote you mentioned actually was in the previous serial, if I'm not mistaken.
no, it was this one. He literally hands him a Viking helmet and says, "What do you think it is? A space helmet for a cow?"
This episode 1,
Yeah.
about 4 minutes in.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Is it?
Yeah.
It's him trying to convince Steven that they're in the 11th century.
Mm.
For some
Isn't
reason,
that
I
the
always
title
thought
of the
that
book
line was
we
in the
reviewed?
Space Museum.
No,
Nope.
Bill.
Hmm.
No. What did you pay attention? Oh my gosh, Bill.
And I thought you watched this episode right before
Yeah.
the podcast.
What the
Bad
hell,
Bill.
Bill?
Bad Bill, no biscuits.
Bad Bill, no biscuits at all. But no,
Isn't there a book
there's
called
a
Space
couple
Helmet
other
for a
lines
Cow?
from the Doctor in
Yeah,
this,
yeah.
but there's a couple other lines from the Doctor in this, but also in particular his instant back and forth with the meddling monk was actually really good. And we didn't even know what a Time Lord was at the time, but they did close in on the fact that yes, they're the same kind of people from the same place essentially, and they both have TARDISes, and they even started mentioning model numbers too, and during this story as well.
Yes, but they would revamp those later.
They would
'Cause
obviously
they
they're
were-
going to
they-
revamp them later, but they mention them, and it's a thing that's kind of stuck is that there are models.
as a Mark IV.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
and it's assumed at that point that the Doctor's TARDIS is a Mark I. And that would later be revamped to be a Type 40. And so things got changed there.
But the fact that they made it a thing already was a step ahead of what they were. It was the first step into actually doing that for the background of the franchise.
I will point out that the monk's existence does screw up one of the things that I had established about Gallifrey.
Mm.
The Doctor explicitly states that the monk is about from 50 years in Gallifrey's future from his point.
Mm.
He actually states
Although
that.
the
Yeah.
line is slightly open to interpretation because it could also just seem as though the Doctor is 50 years older than the monk. Like that's a little bit of a stretch, but it could go either way. I think he just says, "I'm from 50 years earlier."
Something like that.
Which
yeah.
might mean that he
Yeah.
left Gallifrey 50 years earlier than the meddling
That's
monk.
possible too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that's what it was.
Okay.
Matt explained the comments about having a newer TARDIS.
Yeah,
Yeah.
essentially, yeah. That would explain a lot of it.
Okay. So that still keeps my thoughts of transduction barrier keeping Gallifrey standard time intact.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I want to elaborate on Matt's,
right
especially
ahead.
on William Hartnell's act. And this was what I was going to choose for what I really liked is the fact that you get to see both sides of Hartnell's Doctor coin in this.
Mm.
While not quite the level of original bastardness that the Doctor was first season, you see some of that vindictiveness and spite as he goes out to try to prove to Steven come hell to high water that he's in 1066.
Yeah.
There's a little bit of that.
You actually hear him with that old bastard laugh he had. This will show him. This will show him for sure. You know, it's like. And then he comes across the monk and finds out what's going on, and immediately that coin flips.
Mm-hmm.
And he becomes the doctor that he was in later seasons.
It was so interesting seeing the end when he was like, "Oh yes, and quite welcome passengers too." He, and I was like, "Wow, I remember the last time you took on 2 passengers." That was not the reaction.
Mm-hmm. This is almost
not
you
originally,
can almost
yeah.
put your foot down as this is the point where the coin flips, and you come from being the doctor who is this, you know.
Yeah, he still has other irascible moments as the codgy old first Doctor, where he's like the comical moments where I showed at the beginning of our episode here, where he gets a 2x4 somewhere and smacks a Viking over the head. Comments that he was beginning to worry that he wouldn't come in at all.
The gentle art of fisticuffs.
Yeah. And you saw the first Doctor do that a lot during the first series, but not so much later. But they gave him a little bit more of it this episode too.
I mean, if you take a look way back to the first episode, to 10,000 BC, where he's holding a rock and seriously thinking about killing a caveman with it.
Mm-hmm.
You can't see the Doctor doing that here. Knocking a Viking out, yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but you don't see the first Doctor do that much fighting usually otherwise. So it's a little taste of the middle of the road.
Yeah, but I mean, then you get to the point where he's talking to the monk, listening to what the monk is planning,
and then coming back around and just trying to play it off as coyly as possible. Then coming back around and just being the first Doctor we want him to be. And
that's mind you, that maneuver becomes a classic Doctor trope.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we see Tom Baker do it like
several times. Yeah, lots.
Capaldi did it once or twice. It's
a couple times.
One of those things that becomes basically part of the Doctor's personality.
Where he'll pretend to be with the bad guys and all of a sudden just twist and go, "No, you're wrong. This is bad."
Mm-hmm.
And if I have to, I will be the one to stop you.
All right. So bad parts of the episode. Aaron, what did you not like about the episode, or liked the least?
I guess I didn't quite like Vicky and Steven's parts too much. I mean, eventually their wandering around did build up to something. They did discover the monk's TARDIS. But it wasn't until, I believe, episode 3 that happened. And just kind of felt like they were bouncing around everywhere. And it was kind of... We did have the one episode where the Doctor never even appeared. But still, I kind of felt that they were wandering around a little too aimlessly. I didn't feel like it really went anywhere. And to be honest, I don't really remember too much of what they did other than discovering the monk's TARDIS and discovering that the Doctor wasn't in his jail cell.
Yeah, it was a bit of cat and mouse stuff.
Yeah, and it was...
They were like just behind the Doctor.
Yeah, there wasn't too much suspense, at least not for me anyway. But there wasn't really too much else that I disliked about the episode, really.
All right. Bill?
Yeah, I mean, there was a particular moment that I will mention later. But other than that, I'm not really coming up with anything at the moment.
All right. Thomas? Anything in general that grinded your gears?
As far as in general goes, I think I've got a similar situation to Bill where I could probably point to like specific moments, but actually, well, I guess there is like the thing that they seem to.
We say 11th century. I'm pretty sure in the episode, every time they bring up the century they're in, they keep saying 10th.
Steven was saying, it's not the 10th century, but the Doctor was specifically pointing a year and referring to it as the 11th.
Yeah.
Okay. It's like, for some reason, when I watched it through the second time, it sounded like they were only referring to it as the 10th century or something.
No, this is 1066. right before the Battle of Hastings. So
The Doctor got right, and Stephen was the one that kept mentioning 10th century and got slightly off.
I guess actually one thing that it's not so much like a bad thing so much as it was kind of really funny. That that one Saxon guy's like toupee or whatever gets knocked around during one of the fights, and then just to keep it consistent, it's like that for like the rest of the serial.
Oh, slightly off, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was so hard to like not laugh.
I noticed there was something off about him, but I wasn't quite sure what to put my finger on about that. But now that you mention it, okay, I get it. Yeah.
Yeah. Because that means that they had to put it back on like that every time, because they wouldn't have shot that all in sequence. So.
And that poor Saxon guy must have just been pissed because it must have felt really weird.
Yeah, it's almost like you think it would have been better off just not having it on him at all.
would have been, yes.
But yeah, that's about all I've got.
All right, Tim.
The plot about the TARDIS being underwater seemed kind of pointless, and at first I didn't even think it was a plot where, like, oh look, the TARDIS come in, and then when Vicky says, we don't have a time machine anymore, and the Doctor says, what are you talking about? The tide will come out. The tide will go out, the TARDIS will still be there. There is like, why didn't that occur to Vicky and Stephen themselves?
Because the TARDIS looks like it's made of wood, and they
Looks
might
like it
have
could
thought,
float away.
yeah, it looks like it would be able to float.
The HADs will kick in.
Yeah, the HADs hadn't been thought of yet. Wait till we cover that, because it's the exact same damn excuse, only they do it better.
Was that in one of the Ice Warrior episodes we covered?
No, it wasn't. It was in Second Doctor, the Dominators. I think it was in the Dominators anyway.
So it would be a while yet before they mention it.
Yep.
But I guess that thing just seemed completely pointless.
Okay. All right, Matt.
I guess I'll agree with Aaron a bit that the companions kind of ran about with no real sense of reason. But I will say that it's mostly a nitpick because while they did seem to just pointlessly run about, they at least were entertaining to watch and still seemed to be trying to piece things together alongside the Doctor, even though the Doctor was off screen from them. So while there is a little bit of a flaw with them, they did kind of fluff things a little bit by separating the group. It wasn't like massive horrible fluff.
Yeah.
There's worse ways to do fluff.
All right. And
actually gave the characters development time, in fact, now that I think of it. So anyway, Randy.
As for me, I thought that the story could have been a little more complicated. And, given, some other things going on for the companions to do, rather than just kind of try to wander around aimlessly looking for the Doctor, they could have gotten involved, with the Viking raiding party or something like that.
It would have been interesting if they ended up prisoners on the Viking ship.
It would have been,
but then it would probably have been a six-parter.
Yeah,
you could have seen things from William the Conqueror himself's point of view.
Yeah, it would have been
actually,
nice.
Now that I think about it, the two Vikings that we see are just one party. There's like another one that went off in a different direction.
And we never hear from them again.
Yeah. It would have been nice to have something to do there.
Well, apparently those Vikings must have had zero luck because apparently the entire party just never came back.
Yeah, it just it could have been there could have been a little more writing there, something to do, some subplot that could have just made this a little more
complete.
Yes. All right, so your favorite scenes, Aaron.
Here, I have a few.
Pick your favorite of the few.
Let me see here.
Come on, remember, there's 5
All right.
people after you, so...
Well, I thought we were running long on everything. I guess I
no,
like-
but he
not
means
fair
don't
to-
pick multiple scenes when there's other people waiting to pick scenes.
Yes, because you'll pick everybody's scenes,
Now-
and we'll all be pissed at you.
Now, if this were the War Games, there might be enough space to do that.
No, I think I'm just gonna go from the list of how he figured out that the year was 1066. Just going through the line of succession for the royal family and then the invasion, and just piece together everything. Just by talking to one of the locals without giving away the fact that he was
Completely
something
outside.
other than a traveler, maybe, you know?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it
the
just made
traveler's
him
just a
seem
little
like
bit
a
out of touch and
forgetful
trying to
old
remember what
man.
else going on. Yeah.
And I don't think we've seen him that. I don't think, other than the first Doctor and some of the historicals, not even all of them, I don't think we see him have quite that grasp of events really
Mhm.
until New Who, except for maybe 1 or 2 other stories. Generally, in Classic Who, there's a lot more of the aimlessness, and he might like recognize a major event, but he doesn't seem to have quite that encyclopedic knowledge that he does in the first Doctor and in New Who in a lot of Classic Who serials.
Mm-hmm. Well, you know, especially with the second Doctor, the second Doctor couldn't steer the TARDIS worth shit. So he couldn't tell where he was like 90% of the time, so...
This one was like, yeah, this one did everything short of tasting the air.
Mm-hmm. Yes, judging by the pollution content of the air, I would say we're in Earth, London, 1983. Yeah.
I also love that the
Okay.
Doctor holding that helmet is like the most popular image.
All right, Bill.
Okay, so I'm going to go with the scene where he's matching wits with the, like, where he's actually having an honest conversation with the monk, and there's this sheer glee at truly being, you know, encountering an equal, and they're both like giddy with the conversation, until it reaches that point where the Doctor's like, and now I have to stop you. But
now I know what
it's
you're
just
about.
amazing to see. It's just so delightful to see, like, you know, how happy he gets, like, in that moment.
For a few moments, yeah.
Yeah.
And before the realization comes to him, and it's just kind of like, oh.
Well, you know, I mean,
Even
not
then,
that
like, he's so cheerful, like, as he's as he's outsmarting the monk, he's like enjoying the hell out of himself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He feels like he's doing something important.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not only that, but he's getting to interact with someone from his own species, which, you know, other than his granddaughter, hadn't happened in a long time.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a little bit of connection to home. Okay, Thomas.
Well, I'm scrambling for another one because Bill took mine. Granted, of course, there is like, I guess there's technically like a few scenes that they have together anyway, but actually, you know what? I will go with a different scene that they had where the monk is trying to justify, like when they're in the monk's TARDIS and he's trying to justify his actions by saying that, like, he thinks King Harold would be a better king than William the Conqueror and stuff like that. Just because it's like, if this were the Master, or even probably like the Rani, they wouldn't give a shit. Like, they wouldn't try to justify their actions like that. They'd just be like, I do what I want. Screw you.
Well, the Rani wouldn't.
Like,
the Rani wouldn't do that because there's no scientific value to doing it. The Master would only be doing it if he could find a way to get power or money or something from it.
Yeah.
Mm.
And
Yeah,
then
Ronnie
as soon
would
as,
only do it
as
if
soon as any of those kings were worthless to him, he'd just kill them.
Durrani would only do that if there was an important resource that changing the course of history gave her access to.
Yeah.
But yeah, like generally, even like bringing that up, like the fact that it shows that this guy is, even though technically he came before them anyway, having seen like at least bits of the Rani, and having seen the Master before, the fact that it shows that he really is a completely different Time Lord to every other Time Lord we've seen.
Yeah, his motivations are different. He is self-justifying what he's doing, but his ends don't justify them.
He's very much like the Doctor, except at this point the Doctor's afraid of the Time Lords finding him, and the monk really doesn't seem to give a shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the Doctor's a little smarter about picking his battles and where he goes, but
The Doctor at this point is still trying to play things very low key.
You can't change history, not one line.
That's a quote that's been requoted so many times.
The Aztecs, by the way.
Yes.
One of the best lines from that
All right,
episode. Anyway.
Tim.
Favorite scene, Tim?
I love the scene where the Vikings and the Saxons are fighting for the first time, and the dramatic drumming music is going on, and it's just like three people like wrestling. and it's this like big epic dramatic music. Dun 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 dun. It's
very haphazard wrestling too.
You feel like it should be like an army of thousands fighting against a fog-covered field, and it's just
or at least an American with his shirt ripped.
William Shatner running around with a ripped shirt.
Yep.
All right, Matt.
I'm trying to think of anything other than Space Helmet for a Cow.
I'm surprised no one's taken my second yet.
I think the other one I would mention is the first Doctor showing that he's even more smarter than the Meddler by actually going into his TARDIS and going, here's something I can pull out that'll ruin his day, and stop him from trying to do more of this, and just Jerry rigs this tied up bit of string to a device in the TARDIS, pulls it out, and turns out it's what controls the inside. It's just one of those really smart Doctor moments, and the first Doctor gets to pull it off for the first time.
I agree with Matt, but my favorite part was the other end of that, with the monk reading his note and laughing, kind of, self-arrogant.
What does the Doctor know?
Oh yeah.
What does he mean? I should go in there. It's like, no, and I'm like sitting here. It's like, oh, he took the relative dimensional stabilizer field. He took my dimensional control. I'm like, yep.
And you just see him stuck in the doorway. Probably one of the best screen effects they've done up to that point.
It's only a model.
Yeah, like that's what I was wondering. You think they would have just kind of had him perk his head through into a model or something?
No, not necessarily. I'm not sure the model would look good enough, especially when it has to be up that close. So they did it essentially a black on black screenshot, and that worked really well. I'm not sure of the technicals of the effect, but I know how they did it. I've heard of it before.
But it certainly was effective, and I thought that scene was the best. All right, least favorite scenes, Aaron.
I'm gonna say I didn't really have anything that really stood out as awful for me, so I'm going to pass.
All right, Bill.
But by the way, my second favorite scene was Stephen figuring out that the Doctor was in the monk's captivity. But my least favorite scene is also Stephen, because in the beginning when he is just, he goes a little overboard on the doubting Thomas trope and just hammers it in to the point where you're just like, can you shut up and walk outside and speak, speak to anyone, just shut up.
Especially since he's from the future anyway, so it's not like he's from the 60s or something.
Well, technically he was, but not the character, the actor.
Yeah.
But we're talking about the character.
Yeah, I know.
Even though he does use some 60-isms.
Yeah, that's
kind of far out.
Today's slang will last for 1,000 years, even though it won't. Yeah. Thomas.
Mine is one of those things where it's probably not like. It's also kind of just a bit of editing thing where in the first encounter between the Saxons and the Vikings where they one guy gets hit Heldred or whatever his name is, it's supposed to be his arm, and it looks like in one shot, like the initial shot of the swing of the axe, that's what it's going for. But then they cut to a different angle, and it clearly hits him in the gut. But he acts as if his arm is what's bugged, and it's like, but I just saw you get hit in the side with an axe. Like, what the? That makes what? Like, it's one of those things where if they'd had the time
To do multiple
actually,
takes,
like,
it would help.
yeah, then they probably could have got that on like one more take because it would have just been like, okay, that clearly hit your gut, it didn't hit your arms. We need to do that again.
These were in the days where the director was allowed to yell "cut" maybe twice a week at the most.
Yeah.
I
So they had to
seeing
do
a
this as
thing
best
where,
they could without completely
And
botching it.
they had to hurry to get it finished before they shut off the lights.
Yep.
Or actually, in the days that they had to do this before the lights actually set off the sprinkler system.
Yeah. So they could take breaks.
I remember. Yeah, I even remember seeing a thing where Fraser Hines basically said that unless you like really badly swore or something, they would not. They would not cut that like at all.
Yeah. You know, there was a scene where they had to cut it because I think it was it was Victoria, I think, Deborah Watling. Basically, Patrick Troughton and Fraser Hines walked right up to her, and right when they said action, they reached over and they pulled down her skirt.
Oh God.
Obviously, it was meant to be a tease and all good fun, but yeah, that was obviously something they couldn't keep.
I guess thinking of stuff that was cut, apparently there was a few seconds of this episode that got cut from from a bunch of countries just because it was like the two Vikings getting killed.
Yeah.
And some countries cut it for censorship, so that's why the footage doesn't survive.
You mean Australia cut it for censorship?
Yeah.
Apparently,
the scene where they got
there was
caught in the circle.
some other places where it got cut.
Yeah, I know, but Australia is usually the censor Nazi. I hate to say it.
Yeah.
Trust me, I will not.
Until recent years, and even then, they're still kind of.
I mean, even look at like South Park Stick of Truth. That had entire sections of that game cut out.
Oh, wait till Fractured Butthole comes out. Yeah, that'll just really make it past.
Oh no! Apparently it's being released without being censored at all.
Really?
I'll wait
Probably
and
just
see about
they
that
turned
one.
it down, but still.
No, but I mean, Australia was like fairly notorious for cutting bits and pieces out of Doctor Who episodes.
Frequently.
Which makes it interesting because some of the recovered clips that we have from scenes were the only ones that that they found on the Australian cutting room floors. So, don't know what's up with that. Only
they cut them, but they kept them.
Yep. Okay, so who's least favorite scene?
It's Tim next, yeah.
Tim.
I really didn't like the scene where they discover the tide has come in, and Steve says, "Oh, let's go back to the monastery." It's like, "Oh, what good would that do?" Like, and I'm like, "What good would that do? Where else can you go?" Go.
That or the Saxons? Which one do you want to visit first?
Go. Besides, don't you think visiting the monastery is a good idea in this situation, in this circumstances? Don't be a negative Nelly. Nelly, always look on the bright side of life.
Always look on the bright side of life.
Okay, Matt, your least favorite scene.
Oh. I don't know. It just comes off as a really awkward scene. After the Vikings raid that one hut of the Saxons, and the Saxon woman is just there stunned. It's just like that was a really awkward scene, and then they just completely wave it away like nothing happened.
Mm.
I'm not sure really how to take that. It's really odd scene.
Yeah, like at first I thought she was supposed to be dead, and then
that's what I was thinking at first, and then you see her eyes blink, and it's like, wait, no.
Yeah, like they cut away and they cut back, and she's like waking up out of it, and it's like, but her eyes were open.
Yeah, she was like glassy-eyed staring.
What they really didn't want to reveal was the fact that the Vikings were actually really rapey.
Which is what they obviously were hinting at, but then they completely just shoved it under the rug and continued on.
Because this was a children's show.
Yeah,
in the 60s.
It's one part of you don't want to lie about the past, but at the same time you don't want to kind of bring that down on children because that could get really dark.
Yeah.
It would have been just better if they would have like re-edited it and just had her like tied up or something, which is still plausible.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of just sitting there stunned. It's an awkward scene, and they could have done it a little bit better even for the time.
Yeah, I think my least favorite scene was almost any scene with the Vikings, just because I thought they were really poorly written. The costuming was okay, but just how they acted and how they did were just really poorly done. I just thought they never really felt like Vikings to me, other than dress style and names. So that just kind of bothered me. All right.
Is that the name Sven?
No, but I think there was an Olag.
That one surprised me.
Or an Ulf.
Ulf, yeah.
All right. So final thoughts, Aaron.
I thought this was a halfway decent episode. I mean, like I said, the atmosphere they got right. I felt like it was set in 1066 for the most part. You know, aside from the found footage Viking scene, which is, you know, kind of what I expected from an old-timey TV show anyway. I did enjoy the monk as the villain of the piece. Steven did get a little bit annoying at first, but I feel that he and Vicky eventually fulfilled their purpose in the show. You know, they were companions and they set out to discover things. They didn't even need the doctor for some of their scenes, but yeah, I and the doctor himself was very well done. So yeah, I enjoyed it.
All right. And Bill?
Okay. I would say this is a pretty good episode. There were a lot of really good moments. Definitely outweighed the bad considerably. I do think they sort of underused the concept of the monk, and this is partially because of when he was introduced. However, if this had come out, actually, they even could have done something with it a little bit at that point, but it would be even more relevant in the Second Doctor era and later, where if they had said, hey, you know, I just do to Earth history what you do to all of these alien planets, and did some sort of, you know, satire or parody or some sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Deconstruction of the Doctor Who formula, that could have been really interesting, and they really didn't do that. Instead, making him
well, at that point they're still constructing the Doctor Who formula.
Right. Yeah, and that's partially it's because it was so early. But yeah, and they instead added more of this one-off kind of comedic villain, which is good, but could be better if they had used him again a season or so later. So that's a little unfortunate, but not really something to penalize this episode for. And that's it for me.
Well, they did use him a season later.
They used him like 4 serials later, but that was again as a comedic interlude.
All right. Thomas, your final thoughts?
I must admit I was kind of wary going into this, mainly because I'm just not as familiar with the first Doctor stuff anyway.
Oh.
I think like the
what was
hell
that?
is that?
Sorry, my computer went something.
Okay.
Okay,
Anyway,
continue.
anyway. Yeah, like aside from the 10th Planet, I think this is the only other Hartnell serial that I've actually seen, and I was pleasantly surprised when I actually sat down and watched the whole damn thing. I guess I probably expected the stakes to be a bit higher, but to be honest, this is one of those ones where I didn't really mind it that much. That the stakes weren't entirely higher because he didn't even get to the gun, like with the things that he was going to shoot out of that cannon or whatever. But I can see, like, I'm pretty sure Aaron made the point earlier of it seems like this kind of there's a lot of padding in places. So this either could have been shorter or just had more going on to justify 4 episodes. But other than that, I thought this is pretty good.
All right. Tim?
I thought this was a great episode that covered all the bases in that the Doctor was great, the companions were active, the story was intriguing, the non-regular characters were memorable. And I also want to give a special mention to my second favorite scene, in which Stephen has the foresight to tell Vicky, "I'm going to say something to the monk. Whatever you do, don't say anything." Because if Vicky had interrupted that the monk when the monk gave himself away, that definitely would have been my least favorite scene. So just the fact that they averted that gives extra kudos from me.
All right. Matt?
There are tiny little flaws in this one, but there's nothing that really kills the episode, so to speak. There's a lot of really good ideas, some of them not as fleshed out as they could be, and even the companions turned into fluff, but they're the good kind of fluff where we actually get to see the companions work on their own for a change, which you don't always get a lot of during these classic Who episodes. So getting to see these two who are relatively new to the TARDIS actually do something on their own and actually go about it possibly the most correct way they could at the time is just gives more praise to this particular writing of this story, and also throwing in a new Time Lord when Time Lords weren't even a thing yet, and also doing it in a way that doesn't ruin them for the future is also a really good step forward.
All right. So, in my thought, the writing was a little bit weak because it could have been a bit more complicated. The acting of our main characters was pretty well done for what they got. The secondary acting was a bit hit or miss, especially the Vikings. But the special effects for its time were pretty well on the money. All in all, it's kind of a mixed bag for me. It's probably in the good range, but definitely not in the great range. All right. Speaking of which, rating time. And Aaron, you're on first.
I think I'm going to go ahead and give this a 3.5.
3.5. All right. Bill?
Despite the Vikings, I still think this probably has enough great moments and few enough flaws to be a 4.5.
Oh.
4.5. Wow.
Wow, that's really high, actually.
Yeah, Thomas?
Just for the interactions, like mainly the interactions between the Doctor and the monk, I was initially thinking of giving this a 3.5, but I'm going to bump it up to a 4.
All right. Tim?
Tim can beat me.
I'm going to give this a 5.
And we expect nothing less. Matt?
This is a good episode.
I'm actually with Thomas. This could have been a 3.5, but the character interactions totally boosted this to a 4. And if they would have fixed a few more things, it could have been easily higher.
All right.
Now, if Brandy gives
4.0.
this a 3, we'll have a huge range.
Yeah, I'm not gonna. I said it was good,
Right.
but not great. So that puts it in 4.0 range for me.
Mm.
So it seems to be 4.0.
Mostly because of the good special effects and the really good acting by Hartnell in the main cast.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
So that between everything, with a 4.5, 4.0, 4.0, 3.5, 5.0, and 4.0, averages us to a 4.2.
Spider-Man was really good in this episode.
The Mondasian Spider-Man.
Is there any other kind?
Hey, now we know where that robotic voice from the 90s theme comes from.
Oh, God, Matt. Anyway, with the 4.2, puts this one, wow, where does it put it?
72, I think. Oh, 73.
72
Yeah.
out of 213 things currently reviewed. It is on par with Gridlock, Night Visiting, Legopolis, The War Games, a whole bunch of stuff we mentioned before.
Good stuff.
Yep. It is not as good as Army of Ghosts, Doomsday, Curse of Fatal Death, Mummy on the Orient Express,
It's hard to get
Death
that
to
level.
the Daleks, or excuse me, it's better than.
Oh, it's better than, okay.
Yeah, these are 4.1s, Under the Length, Before the Flood, State of Decay. It is not quite as good as Empress of Mars, The Unquiet Dead, Last Christmas, Silence in the Library, Forest of the Dead, Spearhead from Space. So there we go, 72 out of 213, The Time Meddler. And that's all we have to say
Just
about
the top
that.
quarter.
So if you want to hear more of us, please go ahead and subscribe to us on twitch.tv/Unearthly and an Unearthly Podcast on YouTube. You can also follow us for news and updates on Facebook and Twitter. And if you want to support us, you can head on over to patreon.com/Unearthly
All right, next week we go from the early days to one of the most classic eras of Doctor Who, to the Doctor's next one-shot encounter with a rogue Time Lord in The Brain of Morbius, written by Robin Bland, Terrence Dixon, Robert Holmes, and starring Tom Baker as the Doctor, Elizabeth Sladen as Sarah Jane Smith, and featuring Michael Spice as the voice of Morbius.
A sponge has more life than I.
And we will see you next week.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.